Hello and welcome back once again to Rage Gaming and more Baldurs Gate 3. I'm back for another round of potent and interesting builds to consider for your general gameplay, but of course also honor mode. Now I've made a couple of videos like this now and the response has been pretty staggering, so I just wanted to say I've appreciated the feedback so far, the kind responses. So with that said, let's just get started. For the first build, I wanted to give Moon Druid some love. Before I get into that, I need to say that Druid is my least played Baldurs Gate class, and in fact I've actually never played D&D with one in the party before, which is partly why, despite it being very strong right now, I've never covered it even though it's been requested. So if there's anything you want to add to this build or advise around it, you can do so in the comments. You might just help someone, but I have researched and tried to put together what is the best concept for this I can. Why is it so strong now though? Well, Moon Druid has had this major buff after patch 5, because Tavern Brawler, one of the single strongest feats in the game, now works for any wild shape not using a weapon, therefore counting as unarmed damage. Outside of honor mode, this is particularly busted since it seems to apply twice on unarmed attacks that have multiple damage instances, such as certain Druid attacks. But it doesn't seem to work in honor mode specifically, only applying to attack rolls in the harder mode. There is a lot of discussion whether that's intended or not, and if it isn't, they might patch it, and so this might even get stronger. But with the damage not applying twice in honor mode, what's going to be the best form for this concept? That seems to be the Earth Myrmidon. Tavern Brawler increases its damage by a surprising amount, which means it'd be a good idea if you could to get weapon proficiency from a feat or multiclass. And that's just the nature of Moon Druid though. It's quite hard to cover in detail. There's so many options, so many different ways you could run even this specific build. I've also read that when you take on a new form as a Druid, you're given new stats while in it. For Earth Myrmidon that this build centers around, you'll have 18 strength, 10 dex, 17 constitution, and 18 AC while you're in that form. But since this is centered around strength, that's great for Tavern Brawler. How do we level this then? Well, there's a bunch of recommendations, and my favorite has been 11 levels into Moon Druid, resulting in the all-important level 6 spell slot at the end. However, you can multiclass with, other full casters to achieve the same. This idea will leave one level over for 3 popular options: Sorcerer using Draconic Bloodline for the fantastic element resistance and concentration proficiency, and also the really impactful Armor of Agatha's spell, which is why we take White Bloodline. But you could also think about one level into War Cleric, getting you some bonus action attacks. Or we could use Fighter so we can get the weapon proficiencies for the form, but also defensive fighting style. Like I said, there's a lot of options even in this specific build. Whatever you do, you're going to want 10 levels in Druid as soon as possible. There's going to be a lot of perks to that, but one of the big ones is the fact that you'll have 3 attacks while in that form, so it's very important. At level 11, you'll respec to work in Sorcerer, to then follow up with 10 levels of Druid again. Then you can have another level in Druid to finish it off, or go for Cleric or Fighter like we talked about. For your starting points though, we'll start with 16 Wisdom as your main stat for out of form gameplay. You can take 15 Constitution, since we're going to get +1 from Tavern Brawler, and 14 Dex will help with the initiative. The first feat you'll be taking is of course Tavern Brawler, and the second feat in the build, you could either get your Wisdom to 18 or go for Alert instead. In terms of spells while you're leveling, I'd like to highlight the fact that Druid has incredible summon ability, and so you definitely want to be using those. Upcasting a summoned elemental right before fighting, such as one of the strong Myrmidons, and being pre-buffed with Armor of Agatha's from the Sorcerer Bloodline, well, these are smart routines to have before a fight even begins. But some spells to pick up on the way while you're leveling, I'd recommend Flaming Sphere, Spike Growth for control, and Sleet Storm. Leveling aside, it's time for us to talk gear though. Now awkwardly, almost no equipment works in wild shape, leaving plenty of room for your other party members to use the good stuff. But there are a couple of useful things. You could grab some medium armor and any AC increasing accessories you can find. That could just be a shield, or say the Cloak of Protection is a classic pick. This is to protect you when you're not in your wild shape. Also, the legendary mace, of course, Blood of Lathander, is a nice thing to use generally, because its passive provides that auto revive, which can be very clutch. Now outside of that, you'll want the Shapeshifter hat long term, which provides an extra wild shape charge, and also the Shapeshifter's Boon Ring, which is a 1d4 bonus to all checks while shapeshifted or disguised. There are some tricks you can do to get that in Act 1 without an issue, without killing the strange ox, so look that up. But that's my best overview I can give for a quick take on a strong Moon Druid build that's gonna work well in honor mode. I hope that was enough detail to work and consider and then go forward from. But remember, check the comments on this video. I'm sure there's gonna be discussion around what is a very complicated topic like this kind of build. But now let's move on to the next one. A follow-up from last time where we talked about a super high damage ranger build, this one is instead the highest damage sorcerer build that Josh could make. The build centers around the classically effective spell Magic Missiles, which can be upcast to send out more and more missiles per use. That being the core of your damage is awesome. You're able to interrupt concentration using it very well. And yes, it was nerfed in patch 4 in terms of the build. The Spell Might gloves only work with spells using attack rolls, so it wasn't meant to be helping Magic Missile. That would give a lot of extra damage in the build, and now it doesn't work, but it doesn't change the fact that this core class setup and the spell itself is still super strong and will do very well. But what's the setup? Well, it's mainly Wizard at 10 levels, with 1 level into Sorcerer and then 1 level into Cleric. We begin leveling with Sorcerer though, picking up Storm Sorcery for the flight mobility, though you can also consider Draconic Bloodline for one of the good resistance picks. Make sure you pick up at least Shield to begin with, and avoid grabbing Magic Missiles at this stage, because you want the Wizard version since we're going to be scaling with Intelligence. Now in terms of starting stats, we take 16 Dex for the big initiative, 16 Intelligence as our main Wizard, and also 14 Constitution and dump Wisdom to make that happen. If we're doing this from the ground up, then it'll be a good idea now to go 10 levels into Wizard for max power as soon as possible. But once you hit level 12, you'll respec to go Cleric at level 2, and for that Cleric, we're going to be going Light Domain, the fire-based pick. Taking this will give us Sanctuary, which is absolutely fantastic. You become untargetable or make an ally untargetable, though you could also consider taking Create Water here for the extra damage on Thunder and Lightning, which will happen in this build. The Domain is going to provide Warding Flare though. Great survivability for yourself or others on top of your normal shield spell. But what about the 10 wizard levels? Well, at this point, we're going to get Magic Missiles on our first wizard level, since they work with our main stat, and then any utility you find use in. Once we get our subclass, we're going to be taking Evocation. This will immediately give you Sculpt spells, which is nice normally, but since we're only using Magic Missiles, it doesn't matter for us. At level 2, you want to get Misty Step and Knock as some good utility picks. At 4, you're going to get your feat, where we push Intelligence to 18 for the higher modifier. At level 5, we get level 3 spells, which is going to be obviously Haste and Counterspell, and then at 6, you will get Potent Cantrip as a passive, which is nice if you ever use those, but mainly you're going to be using Magic Missiles. Pushing on to level 8, you'll get your next feat, which is going to be Dual Wielder. This is so we can increase the potency of our Magic Missiles, as we'll talk about in the gear section. Finally though, we reach level 10 Wizard for our 10 and 1/1 split, giving us Empowered Evocation, the main passive that adds our Intelligence modifier to damage rolls with Evocation spells. So with that in mind, you'll be casting your missiles, upcasting them to send out loads of them, 8 total at a 6 level spell version, and then you're adding tons of damage to each missile through the passive. For the gear, we can really push this. Obviously, we'll have the 2 glow rings. The Coruscation ring and the Callous Glow ring means each missile is going to be doing a little bit of extra radiant damage, which is stacking up per each missile that hits. Ideally, you'll be using the Spell Crux amulet to gain an extra spell slot to maximize how many missiles you're using, but you only equip that to revive the spell slot that you've used. Otherwise, you're using the Psychic Spark amulet for an extra dart, which is awesome. Now, previously, you'd be running the Spell Might gloves, but like I said, patch 4 nerfed that, so Gloves of the Belligerent Skies is the great alternative. Whenever we deal thunder, lightning, or radiant damage, which we're going to be getting in the build, we'll reverberate the enemies, possibly knocking them prone and dealing even more thunder damage. For the hat, you'd like the Hat of the Sharp Caster, helping prevent low rolls on your damage die. Very impactful per Magic Missile dart. Then we have the weapons. Of course, you're going to want the King of Staffs Marker Heshkir, the legendary weapon with Arcane Battery, and Kareska's Favor. On that, you'd be using Bolts of Doom to get the lightning charge whenever you deal spell damage, giving you lots of procs of lightning. But since you get that in Act 3, you could go for the Spell Sparkler in Act 1, leading to a way to get early lightning damage in the build. But like I said, we're going to be using 2 weapons thanks to the Dual Wielder feat, where of course we're going to be using the very strong sword, Falar Luv. This provides the class action Melody, where we'll be using Shriek. All enemies affected by your aura of Shriek will be taking an extra 1d4 thunder damage, which happens per missile, stacking up even more. And that is basically the build in its concept. Even though the Spell Might gloves have been nerfed in patch 4, it's still super effective as a build. And I think this updated version is still going to work really well in honor mode. Alright, let's move on to something totally different. The full control build of mixing Sorcerer and Cleric to lock down every fight, which could certainly be helpful. Awesome AoE CC, or intense specific CC for the most resistant of enemies. Control is really one of the best ways to reduce enemy damage, by completely stopping it before it can even happen. The build itself is simple. Level 11 Sorcerer and just 1 level into Cleric. The Cleric is going to provide key spells like Command and Sanctuary, but we kick things off of course as a Sorcerer, and then grab Cleric at level 2, putting the rest of the levels into Sorcerer. Sorcerer. The build wants as much charisma and wisdom as it can get though, so we'll start with 17 charisma and 16 wisdom, and then 12 intelligence, with strength being the dump stat. For the Sorcerer subclass, I go Draconic Bloodline for the survivability that provides. There's the element resistance and extra health as you level the Sorcerer up later. White is the common pick because it provides Armor of Agathys. The extra survivability can be very helpful. In terms of spells, you definitely want the shield spell as an early survivable option, but then let's explain that follow-up cleric level. We pick up Knowledge Domain with this one cleric level, which is what's giving us that command spell. Command is used to control not just one enemy, but many enemies at once. And what's incredible about it is the fact that it doesn't require concentration. Very important because a lot of the CCs we're picking up and choosing, they do use concentration. So command and a main concentration CC is how you do double in one turn regularly. Alright, so in terms of the spells that we pick up on the way, I'd recommend early you get Whole Person. For meta magic, we can get Twinned and Extended. Twinned lets us cast things like Double Haste or, control multiple targets. Extended lets us increase how long conditions actually last, but also Quickened and Heightened are going to be very helpful too. At your first feat, I would recommend you push Wisdom to 18 for the next modifier, and also in Act 1, definitely pick up Ethel's Hair and get your Charisma to 18 at the same time. Now, other good spells I should mention will be Hypnotic Pattern, which prevents enemy actions in AoE. It's very good. Counter Spell to stop anything deadly. Polymorph for the incredible hard CC on one dangerous target, much like Banishment can be used. For the second feat, I'd recommend Alert, so you're always early in the turn order, if not first, so you're able to kind of start the fight by controlling the enemies before they can do anything. Later, we can consider spells like Dominate Person, Hold Monster, and an offensive control tool, which is Telekinesis. At level 12 total though, you'll have your 6th level spell slot, and I would strongly recommend you pick up the Globe of Invulnerability, which is a real lifesaver spell. In terms of gear, it is anything and everything that's going to provide spell save DC. Certain spells require enemies to make a saving throw, like many of your control ones, so having higher spell difficulty makes it hard to resist that. We get a good amount of that from our base setup, but there's a lot you get from items that you're going to want. Now, ideally, you'd have the Hood of the Weave, the Cloak of the Weave, and the Robe of the Weave, which all give loads of spell save DC, on top of the Gauntlet of the Tyrant for gloves, and the Staff of Spell Power or Makaheshkir, as well as the Amulet of the Devout for even more spell save DC. Now these are all amazing, obviously, but they're found in Act 3. So earlier than that, you can get Kethric's Shield, the Fistbreaker Helm, the Protectee Sparks Wall, and Melf's First Staff, as a few options on the way. Also, you can get the Ring of Mental Inhibition, which is great for when an enemy fails one of those saving throws, because it'll give them mental fatigue, making follow-ups even harder for them to deal with. So, with this build, you're all about that control. AoE or single target, I've given lots of different options for that, and you're just there to buff and support the team, reducing the incoming damage or entirely stopping it before it can even happen. A very unique and, effective playstyle. Something a bit different for this kind of build list. Alright, moving on to build number 4 though. Big damage, and a pretty well-known one since it's brought up in the comments of these videos quite a few times. This is the College of Swords Bard, centered around the awesome early game bow, Titan String. Titan String deals extra damage equal to your strength modifier, which, as many will know by now, is very easy to maximize in this game. You can get the Hill Giant Club or just a reliable source of Hill Giant Strength Elixirs, all in Act 1 to push your strength really high without ever spending a point on it. So this is why we start with the Bard and start with good stats of 16 Dexterity, 16 Charisma, and 14 Constitution. I will say that there's a bunch of ways you can multi-class this setup, but this is just the one that I'm suggesting. So we start with Bard and push that pretty far to get power ASAP. I like to start with the cantrip Friends, but be wary that it uses concentration, and that can be a problem at the wrong time. At level 2, you'll have the insanely strong Song of Rest for that 3rd short rest per long rest, and also Jack of all trades, turning this already great party face into a top tier one. At level 3, we of course get the subclass, College of Swords, and then we have our incredible flourish attacks, really bumping the power immediately. So with a ranged playstyle like this, you'll of course be using Slashing Flourish most of all of these options, attacking targets twice per use. It is so good. At level 4, you get the feat, which is of course Sharpshooter to really help, and we keep pushing the Bard. At level 5, you get Bardic Inspirations, and you can grab Glyph of Warding for seriously helpful element damage. You just pick whatever's going to be most relevant. And then at level 6, you're going to get your extra attack, and between that and Slashing Flourish, you'll be attacking multiple times already. Then we start multiclassing, leading into a quick 3 levels into Rogue for Thief, where we can get things like sneak attack for even more burst. All you need is advantage or stealth, which we'll be using a lot from our cunning actions, outside of using slashing flourish. Thief, once you get it, will give you fast hands, meaning a second bonus action, so at the end of every turn you can cunning hide, making you a harder target to deal with, and also sneak attack obviously. Alternatively, mid-fight you could be using potions or oils, which is just handy. At level 10 we can snag one more level into Rogue for another feat, where we can push our dex to 18 for more DPS, and the last 2 levels can go straight into Fighter. This way we can get archery fighting style, really helping with the negatives of Sharpshooter, and after that we'll also get Action Surge, meaning another action per short rest. We have 3 of those in this build, so you should be using it every fight. With all that, you have got great utility, many attacks a turn, high damage, and pretty good survivable options. Gear is going to be pretty important though, but what's so good about this build is most of it comes in Act 1. Titan String, the main weapon, is in the Zentrim hideout, but I will say once you hit Act 3 and you're ready to get Gontier Mail, you obviously want to get that because that's going to be self-haste and other awesome perks. For gloves, you'll want the Gloves of Archery, which gives you +2 range damage, and we can also get, say, the Adamantine Scale Chest in the Grimforge. You'd also want to consider a shield for some AC, and maybe you'll be relying on the Club of Hillgiant Strength to keep your strength high without elixirs, though the Knife of the Undermountain King can be a great pick. Lastly, the Cloak of Protection will get you a little bit more AC in Act 2's start, and there's also Killer's Sweetheart for some crit potential in late Act 2. In the endgame though, like I said, you get Gontier Mail, but other items that you want to consider would be the Helm of Balduron and the Helldusk Armor for better survivability, and you can upgrade your gloves to the Legacy of the Masters. That'll be another +2 to attack rolls, very nice. But yeah, that's the build concept. Lots of damage, great ability to look after itself with honor mode in mind. There is a lot of ways you can run this type of build, and I'm sure we'll be talking about it in the comments. But this brings us now to our 5th and final build for the video. This is the very unique one that Josh made, the Lightning Raven build. The core concept here is playing within a cloud of darkness. While being immune to its effects yourself, enemies are going to be disadvantaged while you have advantage fighting within, and ranged enemies can't actually attack whatever is in there. The spell is basically very potent and powerful. A lot of people know about it, but it also has a lot of restrictions. The commitments that you have to make to even get it, the concentration, and so on. This build avoids those restrictions by making use of an incredible summon, you and your Raven teammate. And since you can fight within that cloud, a ranged playstyle works wonders, firing out at those too scared to enter. The crux of this is then the Raven and level 11 Ranger, unlocking Companion's hidden abilities as a Beastmaster. The hidden ability for the Raven is tied to its fly. It creates darkness for 2 turns. By landing on a target location, you are spawning these clouds. It allows for darkness without committing to a multiclass to even have it, or using concentration to apply it yourself, which is absolutely mad. Every turn the Raven is flying around, applying more and more, consistently providing that darkness without you having to do it yourself. So here's the setup. We start as a Ranger, picking whatever favored enemy you like, and whatever suitable Explorer perk. The stats that matter will be 12 Strength, 16 Dexterity, 14 Constitution, and 16 Wisdom. We dump Int and Charisma to make that work. At level 2, you get your Fighting Style, which is of course going to be Archery since we're using a bow. At level 3, we get our subclass of Beastmaster, where we then get our Ranger's Companion. We'll rely upon our Companion through normal Ranger gameplay on the way to getting this build going. The Raven Summon and its hidden abilities are the long-term plan, but Classic Ranger is still going to be great DPS and utility. Anyway, at level 4, we have our first feat, so we take 2 levels into Dex to bring it up to 18. At level 5, you have extra attack, and the build gets pretty strong pretty quick. At this point you also get Companion's Bond, which will buff your current companion nicely. At level 7 you get Exceptional Training, and at level 8 you get your last feat for the build, pushing Dexterity to 20. At level 9 we have a really big DPS spike, where we have level 3 spells. We get the very potent Lightning Arrow, the primary damage dealer for this build, that only gets stronger once you hit the multiclass. By level 10 Ranger you'll have all 3 Wasteland Wanderers for your Explorer perks, meaning lots of helpful element resist. And then finally at level 11 Ranger, this is where the build comes together. We get Bestial Fury, giving your companion an extra attack, which is nice, but more importantly we get the hidden inner strength. For the last level we multiclass into Cleric though, getting War Domain. That gives us the War Priest passive. It gives us lots of bonus attacks to work in, giving us opportunities to finish off enemies faster in a fight. Also, Cleric's going to provide great utility like Sanctuary, Healing, maybe Bless for a DPS boost, but the most important is Create Water, because we're going to double the damage of lightning arrows by making sure enemies are wet first. So that's the whole concept at its maximum, and here's how you gear it. There is one very important item, the Eversight Ring, making you immune to blinds. You're definitely going to want that before you have the Raven, and you will because you get it in Act 2. On the helm, we have the Mask of Soul Perception, ideally for the +2 bonus to attack rolls, as well as the initiative, which is really important, and perception checks. Also long term, you'll be using Gontier Mail as the ideal bow. It has self-haste, which is nuts, without the downsides of a normal haste when you become lethargic, and the incredible Bolt of Celestial Light as one attack, and the passive that gives you sort of guiding bolt effects. Now on the way to that, you can happily use Titan String, while making use of course of Giant Strength Elixirs or the Giant Club for strength levels. And if you want max damage in the endgame, you definitely have Marka Heshkia in the main hand, using it for Koreska's favor, so you can get Bolts of Doom, meaning extra lightning damage on top of everything else, especially when you're creating water. On the way to that though, you can much earlier get something like the Knife of the Undermountain King as a good option. Endgame, you want the Hell Dust Gloves, which will provide you with extra fire damage on your attacks, but you could get earlier the flawed version, or go for the Gloves of Archery. The Armor of Agility is going to be your ideal chest for endgame, because it'll take you Dex modifier and add that to your AC, giving lots of survivability. On the way to all of that though, you can pick up say the Cloak of Protection, and importantly the Killer's Sweetheart Ring for more crit potential. But that's the core of this Ranger build. Tons of attacks a turn, all from within a darkness cloud of safety. Your Raven goes nuts, moving around the battle, attacking targets, spreading darkness constantly, and you will be blasting targets with your high damage hits, creating water, and then popping people with those lightning shots. All while maybe blessing yourself and allies if you got the free concentration. It's honestly quite a simple playstyle, just pretty unique and fun, making the most of darkness. But that finally brings us to the end of the video. Another set of awesome builds, certainly worth considering for Honor mode, or just decimating the other normal modes. It's been good to finally cover some of the stuff that I played little myself, such as, Moon Druid and Beastmaster Ranger. As always though, if you have more information and suggestions for these builds, you can drop it in the comments. Otherwise, I just hope this was interesting or useful to you. For now, I've been Hollow, you've been you, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.